Hi, I'm Michael Barakiva. I'm the director for In Every Generation by Ali Viterbi.
Hi, I'm Jeffrey Lo, and I will be directing Little Shop of Horrors.
Now, Jeffrey, I'm so excited to hear about your production of Little Shop because what do you think is making it such a relevant play for the moment that we're living in?
Well, it's fun because I've been wanting to take a stab at Little Shop of Horrors for a long time. If memory serves, I'm pretty sure it was the first musical, like live musical I ever watched.
God.
Growing up, and I just remember being so taken by, it was my first time seeing story with the music live in front of me outside of like a Disney movie.
How old were you?
Oh gosh, I think I was in middle school.
And did you remember where it was? And do you remember, what do you remember about that production?
I'm pretty sure it was at Children's Musical Theater of San Jose, so local town theater and everything. And I just remember also being so taken where my familiarity with musicals was mostly like Disney movies and stuff like that. And then this plant comes in and starts eating people. And I just remember being so thrilled by the whole thing growing up, and the music and the story never left my mind. And then as I sort of grew up and grew into a more mature artist and started to think about things in a different way, I became really passionate about being able to retell this story and set it in a community that I was more familiar with, like San Francisco's Chinatown, which is where we're going to set it. And then also, as I explored the piece more and tried to really dig in, I realized and was so thrilled by the fact that this story that was like this man-eating plant and these really fun tunes and this scary story was also this cautionary tale about greed and money and hoarding resources. And I'm like, oh, there's so much to this where it's so fun, so thrilling, so full of camp, but also like has a real lesson for us to learn, which I think is like the best kind of art.
And what do you think about setting it in Chinatown in San Francisco is going to make this production unique or extraordinarily relevant?
Yeah, well, what's fun is we're setting it in Chinatown and also setting it modern day. And for me, when I think about, like, as I was saying, with this being a cautionary tale about greed and us wanting to push against sort of the scarcity model of not having enough resources in the world, I think about San Francisco being like a poster child for like the negative impacts of gentrification.
Yeah.
And I think about Chinatown as a community that's holding on for dear life to sort of keep what makes it so unique and beautiful and individual. They're trying to hold on and not allow what's happening to so many other parts of San Francisco and a lot of parts of the country and the world really to happen to Chinatown.
When you talk about that, it sparks so many things in my mind. Like, I can't wait to see how a Nebuchadnezzar character is manifested in a Chinese American community, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a lot of fun. And what's so cool, so I'm currently in the zone of reimagining a piece that so many people know and so many people love, and how can we recontextualize it to today. And I think about the process you're going through within Every Generation, which is a much newer play. And we've been talking about how you've been having conversations with your playwright, Ali. And how has that been going for you?
Oh, she's amazing. And one of the things that I love about directing new work is that you feel like there's a co-parent as opposed to just like doing it by yourself and hoping for the best.
Yeah.
And another thing is that Ali has such a unique take on the Jewish experience because of her life and the life that she's led. She has an extraordinary podcast in which she discusses with a rabbi sacred Jewish texts and how they are relevant. And so I just love talking to her and being able to dig deep into the story of a family that is celebrating Seder, Passover, over thousands of years.
Yeah. Has a lot of your work as a director been mostly in newer work, or have you sort of...
I've really run the gamut, and I think like many of us who are making a career in this as a freelancer, if they need me to direct musicals, I figured out how to direct musicals. If they need me how to direct straight plays, but I did have the unique experience of working for Wendy Wasserstein for the last 5 years of her life. And the previous time that I was here in Theater Works, Silicon Valley, was as Wendy's date for some benefit.
Wow.
Because I think Kelly produced every play that she's ever written, and there are very few theaters that can say that.
And we were getting set to produce, I think, a musical she was working on.
Oh, probably Pamela's first musical.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about how do you prepare differently for a new play versus sort of a classic play or an established play?
Yeah, so I love, I love to read a play and then put it aside for a long time and then just scribble notes or questions that I have about it, and then I come back to it. And when I'm directing a classical play, I hit my head against a wall until I come up with the answers.
Yeah.
But with a new play, I can just ask the playwright what the answers are.
Oh, yeah.
And that also reminds me of something that I'm dying to ask you about Little Shop.
Yes, please.
Which is that you had, this, it sounds like a really important experience as a child with this musical.
Yeah.
And then you're coming back to it as an adult. And are there things about the material that you remember differently or that you're experiencing from a totally different perspective now?
Yeah, I remember sort of, in a lot of ways, well, two things. I brushed off people getting eaten much more as a child. As a child, for some reason, it didn't scare me at all. It was just like, oh yeah, like, they get eaten. And now when I read the script and, it tells you how they get eaten or who gets eaten or how it happens, I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a scary being that's in this shop.
But still what sounds amazing about it is that you were in middle school, this show had a profound experience for you, and so that people might be scared to bring their children to here, but in fact, it was something that opened up your imagination.
1,000%. And I think that there's something where it's scary when you really think about it. And I think I think a lot of the best pieces of art that involves sort of, I guess, family-oriented programming is stories where people of different generations will be able to get something different from the story.
Yes.
Right, and I think that the younger audiences that will have a certain experience and will gather certain things, and then older audiences will gather different things, and I hope really a lot of those...
That is really interesting because somebody was just telling me, I was wondering why television was so bad for so long. Like when you think about the TV I grew up in the 80s, those sitcoms or those hour-long shows, they're just mostly garbage. And I was like, why were they so bad? And somebody was just saying to me that in those times, an entire family had to agree upon a show to watch them. So there was sort of a common base denominator that had to work out. And now with streaming, programming can become so niche.
Oh, interesting, yeah.
And it makes me think about how theaters have been doing that niche programming the whole time. And there are shows like your shows that an entire family can watch, but at the same time that it's there's a camp element or there's a musical element, or with your production there's a Chinese American element that is also going to speak to really specific communities.
Yeah. You know what's so cool? So I want to ask you about sort of the intergenerational aspects of your play.
Yeah.
And one of the things you were asking me, one of the things that I'm excited about is sort of, we're setting it in Chinatown, but we're getting to explore different communities interacting with each other. So it's not going to be an entirely Chinese American cast or even Chinese American characters. We have members of the African American community that'll be in the play. We have Filipino American and mixed race folks in the play, and it's going to be really fun set on that backdrop of Chinatown, where if you walk in Chinatown right now, people are of all different backgrounds, are at the restaurants, are in the flower shops.
Really interesting.
All those different things, which is going to be really fun to be able to watch just American life in this very American place. Because Chinese people, I think, will go to Chinatown and be like, this is American, this is not Chinese.
Yeah, right.
I mean?
And something that I also really love about that is that it sounds like a theater this close to San Francisco is doing this production, and the audience will have a unique experience.
Yeah.
Because this production in New York, I don't know this Chinatown as well, so I'm not going to have that same kind of rich experience.
We have this funny experience that our scenic designer, Chris Fitzer, and I, we made a couple of trips to Chinatown. One to do scenic research, and then the other one to just eat through the entire...
Yeah, sure. I want to do that one a few more times.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Thanks.
But what was really funny was, and I don't know why this got so much energy out of me, but the first time while we were walking through where we spotted a flower shop in Chinatown, and I just ran in, just so excited, like, oh, flower shop, and I ran in with all this energy, and this group of 4 women who were, arranging the flowers, naturally got really freaked out where all this energy just burst into the door. They were like, what was that? And I was like, oh no, I scared all of them. They are not going to respond well when I asked them if I could take photos of their shop.
Right.
And I just sort of slowly backed out, and I'm like, Chris, I think you have to be
Go in there and then buy a lot of flowers.
I scared all of them.
Well, you asked about the intergenerationality. And it's one of the things that drew me to this place so much, because there are grandparents, there's a parent, and then there are children. And each scene in the play is the same family in sort of a really different moment in time. Some happen in the future, some happen in the biblical past. And it has this beautiful epic quality to it. But on a really personal level, it's also really deeply moving to me right now because all of my family functions have these three generations represented. And it's especially moving because there's a patriarch in the first scene, and they don't know it, but it will be his last Seder. He's towards the end of his life, and he's going to pass very quickly. And when Tim asked me to do this play, my father was already declining, and my father is Jewish and fought in the Israeli War of Independence, and much of my relationship to Judaism is related to him. And many of the last conversations that I had with him were about this play because he passed away a few weeks ago. And one of the many reasons that I'm so grateful to have the chance to work on this is because it let us connect about something that I knew was really important for him. And on a really personal level, my memories of my childhood, Passovers and Seders and the Haggadahs that we read were so closely linked to him. And he loved being able to sort of relive those memories as I told him about this play.
Wow. Wow, that's beautiful. That's really beautiful. That makes me think, I did just get married like 15 days ago.
Oh my God,
and what was, I'm getting used to this.
Yeah.
I'm still getting used to it. And one of the things as my wife and I were sort of sketching out the outline of our ceremony is we realized that in terms of the generation of our grandparents, either 6 of them are no longer with us and 2 of them were not in good enough health to join us.
Yeah.
And so we took a moment during the ceremony to sort of acknowledge that generation of folks, both older and just folks in general that were no longer with us or couldn't make it for any reason.
Yeah.
And that really makes me, what you're sharing made me think about that. And also, somewhat related to some of the themes in Every Generation, we're a mixed culture marriage where my wife is Jewish, and during our ceremony, I very nervously did break the glass.
Oh, that's great.
And we were very mindful where we did a couple of Filipino ceremonies where we did sort of a veil and cord ceremony where elders and sponsors will sort of cover us. We did this unity candle thing that's Filipino, and then we did breaking of the glass. And I was really nervous, and I just had to say it out loud to the crowd that I'm like, my friend Max Takis sent me a video of people who didn't do this correctly and slipped and fell. So that's all that's on my mind right now. But I did successfully break the glass.
Hearing you talk about this is so moving to me because when my husband and I got married almost 10 years ago, he's from Mexico, and we also created a mixed cultural and faith ceremony. So I said to him, look, I'm breaking the glass and we're getting married under a chuppah, and those things are non-negotiable. And he incorporated some indigenous ceremonies that were really meaningful to him and some Catholic ceremonies because he's from Mexico. And I do think that when we're thinking about these generations, which the notion of generation is so important in both of our plays, there is this sense now that I am middle-aged and I'm looking at younger people and I'm thinking to myself, when I was your age, all older people felt like they were the same age to me, and I had no relationship to them. And now I feel like that Roman god Janus with the 2 faces, and I see the generation above us, the boomers above us, and I'm seeing the millennials and the Gen Xers below us, and I'm just thinking how lucky I am to be working on a play that has all of those voices represented so beautifully and lets the natural conflict between them arise.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Sharing so much about, we're sharing personal stories, which is really lovely, and also sharing stuff about our cultures, which it's occurring to me, I don't know why it's just occurring to me now, but I'm really excited that for both of our shows, that's what we get to do with the audience. I'm partially Chinese American, but mostly I would identify as Filipino American, but so much of my identity, both like the food that I ate growing up and the art and culture, so much of it was also Chinese American. So there's a familiarity and a comfort that I have around Chinese American things and Asian American things, which will also be involved in this production of Little Shop. And I'm just really excited to be able to share it with the audience.
Well, this is so interesting because it's making me think how you're working on a piece that was written by white writers and you're reimagining it in a multicultural way that welcomes both the original audience it was intended for as well as the rest of the world in its multiculturalness. One of the things, and I think you're the one who said this about this play, about In Every Generation, and I've really kept it close to my heart, is that although it is very much about a Jewish experience, Ali writes it with a really welcoming spirit, which is so much of what the Passover experience is, so that I think that if you are Jewish, you will be able to appreciate it, really the nuance of it, and if not, you'll be able to leave feeling like you've been welcomed into a Jewish home for a Seder and for a Jewish meal.
Yeah, and that's been the experience. All of the Jewish celebrations that I've been invited to, both from my wife's family and Ronit, your assistant director's family, has invited me over. I've always felt that welcoming spirit of both, hey, this food smells really good, eat it with us, but also it's not just you're just going to participate in this, we're going to teach you what this is, in a way where I've always felt super welcome, and I've been really excited to learn and grow from it.
Yes, and that also reminds me of another thing that I'm really excited about, which is that an entire Seder meal is consumed over the course of my play.
Oh my God.
So like during auditions, the actors are like, I don't know how to plan for the amount of calories that I'm going to have to consume every night during this production.
Oh my gosh, how do you, this is so technical and in the weeds, but I'm like, in terms of like, just like your actors having to say the lines and eat at the same time, that's going to be a big thing for you, right?
Well, food is so funny on stage. And there was an actor that I worked with at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival who had to eat an apple on stage. And I said, we could cut it, or I could talk to the playwright about it. He goes, no, I love eating on stage because it's real. And I thought, oh, that's so right, because there's so many things that are not real on stage that are either the illusion of reality or the metaphor of reality. But like, we eat an apple on stage the exact same way that we eat an apple in life. And so I think the effect that it has is that it really grounds the play in a kind of reality. And it makes me think of another similarity, which is that smell is really important in both of our plays. Like when I walk into a flower shop, that's one of the first things that I think about, is that sort of olfactory embrace. And when I think about these meals, I just think about how delicious my house smelled for the week beforehand, as we all sort of chipped in and prepared and cooked and prepared for the Passover Seder.
Yeah. Lots of eating involved in our plays. Whole Seder meals, 4 bodies.
Yeah, that's right. A lot of consumption. Yes, that's right.
This might be a spoiler, friends, so they might cut this out. One thing that I'm also realizing in this moment, it's so funny thinking about the connections between our plays. Both of our plays end in quite a bit of spectacle.
Yes, yes, yes.
It's more of a spoiler for your play than mine.
Oh, that's true. That's true. And in both of them, you see this like sort of really excellent construction, because the writers understand that spectacle is a great way of increasing stakes and making the end of a play really dynamic and really climactic and exciting. Yeah. So, if I can ask you, what is the thing that you're most scared about entering the rehearsal process for Little Shop?
I would say that, if I'm being perfectly honest, the thing that scares me the most is the fact that this is going to be my first time directing a musical.
Oh my God, how exciting!
Yeah, it's both exciting and very scary, but I think about the last time I worked on a musical, I was an assistant director for TheaterWorks' The Four Immigrants, a world premiere musical.
Wow.
And I remember just having such a beautiful experience there. So I hold that in my heart. And even one of the cast members of that show is going to be our Seymour.
Amazing.
Which is going to be super great. And there's a lot of cast members where I have a great deal of comfort with them. So that'll be nice. But it's going to be a challenge, but both really exciting, where I think that if done right, I think the things that, I bring to the table when I'm directing a play without music can be of benefit to this piece.
Yes, I totally. I went through that when I was running the Hangar Theater in Ithaca. I hadn't come up as a musical director, and I worked on them a little bit, but I directed a musical every summer that I was there. And like you, I came from straight plays. And what I found, as I'm sure you will find, is that there are different tools in telling a story, but what I love about straight directors who direct musicals is that they are really interested in storytelling. So to me, it sort of strips away what I often consider to be unnecessary choreography, or, a musical number can be lovely and the voice can be lovely, but if they're not actually telling a story, it has no place. And so I'm sure that your production will benefit from all the rigor that you have gained from the straight rehearsal process.
Thank you. And I also remind myself, even in the straight play process, I always, without fail, have the same moment, maybe like a week before I start rehearsals, where I'll read a script, and in my mind, in preparation, I don't know how to say these lines. Am I ready to do this play? Can I do this play? And then we get to the table read on the first rehearsal, and I remind myself, I don't know how to say these lines because it's not my job to say these lines.
Yes.
Everyone else knows how to say these lines. And for me, although this is my first musical, we have an incredible team around me. We have a resident stage manager, resident music director, and a choreographer who've done many musicals before, who've worked together before, and have worked with me in different capacities before. So there's already a comfort there, and also I'll have the comfort level to be able to not have the ego to not ask questions. I could be like, so what should we do?
Totally.
How should we move forward?
And the other thing that you'll find that's amazing is that anytime you don't know how to do something, you can always just say, oh, the choreographer will do that. And it's an amazing handoff that you can't do in a straight play.
Well, what about you? What scares you the most about In Every Generation?
You know, there are a few things. I think the first thing is that there is so much heart in this play, and there is so much, there's the honoring of a really profound Jewish story. And I just want to make sure I want to get that right. I want to get that right for my father. I want to get it right for Wendy Wasserstein. I want to get it right for Ali Viterbi. And I just really want to honor that experience. And then one of the things that I've been learning during auditions is because the play moves through times and we meet the characters in different times, there's this fascinating question about how to cast it. You know, do you cast it in the age they are when we meet them? Do you cast it in the most difficult scene that they have to perform? And it's another one of the things that I love about theater is that age, like everything else, becomes immutable in this way, and it's just serving to tell the story. And so it leaves for this great, and the second scene of my play, as you know, is this beautiful romance between the two grandparents. But we meet them when they are in their early 80s, and then this romance plays out between them when they're in their early 20s. And seeing actors with that kind of gravitas surrender to the romanticism of their youth, that's going to be a beautiful thing, and I want to make sure to honor that in the storytelling.
Yeah, it's going to be, and the beautiful thing is so often you see younger people playing much older, but so rarely do you see older people playing much younger. And in a lot of ways, costumes and makeup can age you up, but
in a really different way.
In a very different way.
Yes.
And in reverse, we get to see just the acting and the emotion and the text do the work.
Totally. And you know, a lot of writers that I know who are my age, they say, I tend to write for people my age. And what I've found is that now that I'm in my 40s, I'm writing for actors who just have so much more experience than actors in their 20s, and they can do so much more. And one of the things that I'm really excited about is to see this tender love scene played by actors with decades of experience. You know, it's like thinking about Romeo and Juliet and casting them at the age of their parents.
Yeah, yeah.
So seeing like what that tenderness and what that experience will bring to it. Mm-hmm. And there's also something really fun about the play that, again, makes it difficult. One of the scenes happens 30 years in the future. So all the designers and I are having these great conversations about, well, what will a wheelchair look like 30 years in the future? And there's something that is referred to as a thought-to-text machine. And the playwright gives us no other evidence. It's just something that takes your thoughts and projects them into a screen.
Yeah. I recently worked on a play where we sort of had, it wasn't 30 years in the future, but it was enough in the future where we had to sort of deal with that, where we're like, there's like a beep beep and there's a device and what is it? And we were debating and we were looking through prop storage and we kept thinking of things that seemed like fancy technology now.
Yes.
But the answer from the director kept being, well, it can't be that because that exists now.
Right.
And the funny thing is, it just ended up being just like a piece of neon plastic that looked like something.
Yeah, that's amazing. Right. Because we're seeing that all over technologies. That like the phones get smaller and smaller and smaller. Mm-hmm. The chips are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And so when we think to ourselves, what will the future look like? The most important question is, of course, what are the things that we will need, and how will people figure out how to create those things to charge us money for them?
Yeah. Can I ask you? I don't know why this question gets so interesting, because of the fact that your play spans back and forth in time, but it spans all these different time periods and these different decades, but it's being presented now. And can I ask what you think makes this play so important to tell now?
Well, I think what is extraordinary about looking at the story through the Jewish lens is that as a people and as a religion, Judaism has been around for so long, and it gives you this perspective that things change a lot and things are the same a lot. And moving through time, the play enforces that in the most moving and sometimes heartbreaking and sometimes terrifying and sometimes inspirational ways. What is the single moment in your play that you're most excited about seeing realized?
On my Apple Music, one of the most played songs is Downtown. And to have the reveal of, the musical will start with this little shop sign, and currently the plan is to have our little shop sign sort of match the way you'll see signs in Chinatown, where it'll be both in English letters and in Chinese characters, and that excites me. But then to have that sign fly up and to have our set be revealed, and it's a new and different version of the Little Shop of Horrors set. That moment for both the people who have seen this musical before and are excited to see it, and people who have never seen it like this before and never imagined it could be done this way. I just can't wait for that moment, and it's going to be right in the beginning, and it'll all
my God.
uphill from there.
Yeah, that's great.
What about you? What are you excited about?
I guess I'm trying to figure out how to answer this without spoiler, but I will say that in the last scene of the play, there's an imaginative conceit about an essential part of Passover, and the play sort of presents an idea about how it originated. And I just find it so moving, and I think for any of us who have a relationship to Passover, it will spark all kinds of things, and to people who don't, it'll be this extraordinarily imaginative insight into something that has become such an inherent part of the fabric of the world that we just take it for granted. So that's the thing I'm most excited to figure out.
I can't wait to see your show.
Cheers.